Hi everyone, I'm just going to do a really quick tutorial because this is something that really helped me recently. A really simple tip. It's going to help maybe if you've got a slower computer, it'll help you to speed up your viewport display because on a slow computer, depending on how many objects you've got. But with me, when I come to do things like, well, volumes are not too bad, but when I come to do things like, particle systems like smoke and fire, oh man, that's just that. Yeah, I need to get a better computer before I even attempt that kind of thing. But anyway, if you've got a lot of objects in your scene and everything starts to run a bit slowly, then you can use this tip to maybe help speed up things. So I'm going to add a subdivision to this cube. I'm going to do Control 4. I was going to add 4 subdivisions to it, so it's nice and smooth now. And let's say you've got 1,000 of these objects, it's going to start to slow down your viewport. So every time you make a move, especially if you're in the viewport shading and you're actually looking at the in cycles, you're actually looking at the cycles output, it really is going to slow everything down. So what you can do is you can go to the render tab. So in the beginning, there was one scene I had lots of different objects and everything was getting really painfully slow, and I basically went through every single object, checked the subdivision on that object, and then reduced it to about 1. So I went through every single object, and that was really painful, so you don't need to do that. So what you can do is you can go to the render tab, go to simplify. And in the beginning, when I was using when I found out about this, all I was ever doing was checking simplify. I didn't do anything else. I thought it was doing stuff in the background, that it would take care of, but no, it wasn't doing anything. So eventually came into the simplify and found that you've got this max subdivision here. So I clicked on the max subdivision, and if you just press 1, then every object in your scene on the viewport is going to have just a subdivision of 1. I mean, if you can change it to have it 2, things like that. So it's a lot easier, and it's going to help speed up if you've got a slower PC. Another thing that I do as well is up here again in the render tabs, and then under the viewport, I change the max samples. I mean, down here you got render samples of 4096. I mean, I've never rendered that high. I mean, I just render around about 64, sometimes even 32. And you just check to see what the quality is like. But yeah, I don't know why it's set so high. And there's a lot of things in Blender that are set by default that technically slow things down, and you might not necessarily need it, but there's obviously a reason for that. They're much cleverer, more clever than I am at Blender headquarters. But yeah, so what you can do again to speed up your viewport is reduce the max samples in your viewport. So it's all going to be different. I tend to turn it down to about 32. If my PC is really running slow, I'll turn it down to about 16. And sometimes for me as well, it can get a little, if you've got a lot of objects and things in your scene and you're trying to move around or navigate around by using the mouse, it can take, especially if you're in cycles, rendering out cycles, it can take ages to update and then render all the samples and things like that. So sometimes it's actually quicker for me to just press F12 and do a quick render of the scene instead of having it to constantly update in the viewport. So I might just use the kind of solid view, set up my scene, set up my camera, and then just do a very quick render at certain samples just to see what it kind of looked like. And yeah, sometimes I found out for me that is actually quicker and less frustrating, especially if Blender starts to kind of like get its knickers in a twist, if I can say that, and just kind of start to freeze and do all kinds of, you get that blue wheel and that, really does your head in. But yeah, so those are 2 tips: the simplify and the max samples. You can change these. That's just, like I say, it's just a very quick tip. I'm going to look into some of the things that have helped speed up my renders as well recently. I was rendering a car animation, and every scene took about 1.25 minutes, and I applied some of these new render optimizations, should we call them, because I can't think of the words right now, and it took it from around about 1:15 to about 40 seconds. Now I wish I knew this after I'd rendered the entire animation, because the entire animation took about 30 hours in total, and I could have cut that down quite a bit. I mean, I didn't go in 30 hours, you know, I did bits, I had different scenes, different camera angles, so I rendered them out individually. So it was about an hour at the time sometimes, but yeah, required a lot of patience. So yeah, so I hope that helps anybody or everybody.